What is good, people? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm running through the Toyota Tacoma drift setup, a setup built to make this thing actually slide clean and controllable. The Tacoma is a big, heavy truck, so instead of fighting the weight, this setup leans into it. The goal here is to initiate easy, stable transitions and drift that roll on smoothly. Perfect for chill runs, chase footage, and clean replays. Alright, so now we're going to jump into the setup itself, and I'll run through the settings I'm using on this Tacoma. The whole idea of this setup is to keep the truck smooth, predictable, and controlled, especially for cinematic drifting and tandem. So, starting with suspension stiffness, the front suspension is slightly softer than a competition build, which helps the truck transfer weight smoothly and keep steering calm at angles. At the rear, the suspension is softer again. This lets the truck squat and slide progressively instead of snapping loose, which is really important on big heavy vehicles like this Tacoma. Onto the alignment. For alignment, the front has a decent amount of negative camber to keep grip at angles, but not so much that it becomes twitchy. The Ackerman is reduced slightly, which makes the steering smoother and more predictable during them long drifts. On the rear camber, the toe is set to help the truck hold angles comfortably and stay stable mid-drifts. Onto the wheels and tyres. The front runs full grip for control and confidence, while the rear has slightly reduced grip and adjusted the pressure to slow the rotation down. This helps keep the truck from accelerating too quickly mid-drift and makes it much easier to hold long, clean drifts. Brake setup is kept simple. Brake torque is slightly reduced with a forward bias, which keeps brakes stable on entry and stops the rear from locking too aggressively. ABS is left on to keep everything smooth, especially when transitioning into corners. Moving on to the engine. This track still has plenty of power, but it's been slightly detuned to keep speed under control and make it easier to drive smoothly. Boost pressure is lower, the rev limiter is brought down a bit, and the torque delivery is flattened out. This stops the Tacoma from constantly gaining speed mid-drift and makes the throttle control much more manageable. Gearbox settings are tuned for slow, controlled drifting. The final drive is shortened. Third gear is set up as a main drifting gear. This lets you stay in one gear through most corners without truck pulling too hard or running away from you on the longer sections. Differential is set up to be smooth and predictable, locking its balance so both rear wheels stay consistent under power but without making the rear end feel nervous or snappy. This helps the truck settle into a drift and stay there without constantly needing to recorrect. Weight is kept realistically with a slight lower centre of mass to keep the truck planted. You still feel the weight of the Tacoma, but it works with the setup rather than against it. So, that's a full setup for my low and slow Tacoma drift build. Now I'll jump back into some gameplay so you can see how it looks on the track. So, if this setup's helped you out, drop a like, let me know how it feels for you, and I'll be testing tweaks and dropping more setups soon. So make sure you're subscribed, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take it easy.
Models popping bottles.